are the major tools? We heard about some of them in, as I recall, in the second presentation, the first seminar. So we all heard about eye tracking, which is basically less about going like the paper that I gave to you, or the two papers I gave to you, less about measuring pupil dilation. It's more about really measuring gazes, measuring eye movements, measuring scan paths. Another one is, and I used this kind of research also in the past, is, so to say, it's called skin conductance response. This is like a different way how to measure stress. Skin conductance means when you're stressed, your body, or on your skin, there's some glands of sweat when you're stressed in this way. And this could measure, the stronger that is, the more you're stressed. A further form is FEMG, that measures electrical impulses caused by muscle fibers, but which is very much related more to the medicine field. So it's pretty difficult to do so. Some of you also measured heartbeat, and it's to do your experiments, and this is not very far from EKG, electrocardiogram, which is not nothing less than the electrical activity of the heart, of the skin. So it's good to measure. And yeah, I was not really telling you that, but I liked a lot that you try to use this opportunity. And you might have seen, in particular, in some way, we had this comparison between offline and online gaming, that you see differences when you are in a certain kind of context, like the online context versus the offline context, for example. In addition to the so to say, regular psychophysiological tools, we have some additional tools that are very fancy, but they're very expensive. They are so-called brain imaging tools, and the most interesting one, or the most common one, is fMRI. That's the acronym for functional magnetic resonance imaging. And this is basically showing the neural activity and the changes in blood flow in the brain. This is interesting because changes in blood flow start when your brain is triggered by something, by a stimulus that requires brain activity. So to say something different, something unexpected, something new, something that might be helpful or not. So that's a way to measure that. Problem, fMRI. I don't know if anyone has ever had the chance to need to do an fMRI. That's the whole work, the whole procedure is very complex and very difficult, and it takes a lot of time to prepare individuals for fMRI. Problem is, and we'll talk about that later, it's very difficult to develop and to set up. There are some different ones as well, just want to mention them, not very much going into detail. Is positron emission tomography. This is like the metabolic activity. Then electroencephalography. That's the electric brain activity. This is much more common. EEG has been done, for example, to test individuals for certain kind of diseases that might have happened to one of you also. And also an MEG, that's a magnetoencephalography, and that changes, or that measures changes in magnetic fields by brain activities. I won't really challenging you that's why I haven't done it in a seminar, and I won't do that, for example, in the mid-exam, but just to tell you that, to provide you the whole overview. So I'm also providing you some insights about brain imaging tools, but in fact, I strongly guess that you won't use them in practice, same most likely for me, because there are too many circumstances that are difficult. And a particular one is that, because they're so expensive. And you need a hell of money to do so. And within the paper by Demoka, they also try to set up the cost for doing such a study. And you see by just looking at how much an eye tracker costs that this is not so easy. Like renting an eye tracker would be something like €100 or 100 USD per hour, or you have one. Here in Innsbruck, we have we have some, so you wouldn't have the cost like this. Skin conductance is a little cheaper. It's like just electrodes placed on your hand, so that's not that expensive. All the other like FEMG or EKG is would be something like 3,000 or 5,000 euro. Or US dollars. But looking at brain imaging tools, you see why I said this is complex, because it's so very different. It takes about per participant in an experiment or in an experimental setup for doing an fMRI study across something like 400, an average 300 to 400 USD for one participant. So you have discussed the issue of representativeness. How many people do I need that I have a representative study? This is exactly the problem, because if you just get the results for 5 people there and you're already burned around 2,000 US, your results are not that meaningful. So you have to establish also in brain imaging studies about something like 20 to up to 50 or even 100 participants. And you can do the maths. That's very expensive. And usually, and this is the challenge, although it looks very, very fancy if you see those results, still what we are discussing in information systems research since a couple of years now, is it really valuable to invest that much money? Like, for example, having 50 participants, 400 for 50 participants, where you have to pay about 400 USD per participant, which would equal about 20,000 US dollars for one study. Is it really worth it? And yes, we have options in research to gather such money. And yes, we have a lot of tools, and we can share knowledge together, for example, with our colleagues from the Medizinische University in Innsbruck, but still it's a lot. And this is the challenge where I am still considering not to doing that, because too much. And I don't know if I would burn that much money in the end, come up with results that nobody cares about, I would feel really bad. So that's my particular reason why I'm not doing it. What are helpful aspects, nevertheless, of you had heard about, yes, on the one hand side it's not subjective, or it's less subjective, and it provides some interesting aspects about individuals' preferences, or not just necessarily that individuals have to be aware of a certain kind of issue or artifact. Also interesting is that you can do real-time measurement. I always think about when you're doing surveys and interviews, and think about that when you're doing those exercises in the second part of this course, that always people tend to refer to about the past. So it's always retrospective. You're asking them, okay, do you think the smartphone is playful? Or do you think it's valuable to use such kind of a smartphone? If you're doing that, you ask, sure, in a very particular moment, but not necessarily, but the individual has to refer about what he has done in the past and about his experiences with the smartphone. So it's not exactly the very moment when all this happens. And this is the very, very nice aspect of using neurophysiological tools, in particular like eye tracking. It's the very moment. It's not like something that happened in the past, it's the very moment. And also what makes it interesting, and that's why it makes it interesting to UX design, is you see how they respond to a specific stimulus. If you're asking them, have you recognized this or that or this or that, they can say yes or no. You not necessarily know if they were aware of that stimulus. But by using such tools, you recognize and you definitely know if they were affected. If you're doing an fMRI study, you see by the changes in blood plasma in the brain, okay, he was aware of that. By using eye tracking, you can see, has he viewed this particular aspect? By using skin conductance or stress-related measures, you can see, okay, when this stimulus came, he got more stress or less stress, whatever. So it's about responding to a certain kind of distant stimuluses. Also, it has the opportunity to better do a temporal match in this regard, but you really see, okay, this was the task, this is the respective tool, and this is the response what happened. And this is this is why research guesses or research states, and I can echo that neurophysiological tools may help us to infer some causal relationships that we're not able to infer just based on regular tools. So we can set up a whole new world for us. By just doing regular behavior science research, like doing experiments, like doing surveys, like doing interviews, we're always, we start with theory, we develop theory, and based on that we do theory testing. But those causal relationships are always based on the human brain, because researchers started to infer causal relationship for theory, like it's basically just logical reasoning. Prior research has done that, so I theorized this and developed this hypothesis and that hypothesis. But using neurophysiological tools, it can be done the other way around. So you have the chance really to use such kind of data and infer new causal relationships about human behaving, human acting that we did not know beforehand. So pretty interesting, pretty fancy. Also, it is very helpful to measure, valuable for measure constructs that people usually do not want to reveal. Like there's some issues that are where answers seem to be very political oriented. Just gave you an example, and where it turns to be very interesting. We're discussing very much about fake news currently in social media at the moment. So it's hard to state, okay, have you bite about this fake news, or do you like such kind of fake news? But if you see and do, for example, a neurophysiological study, and you see that a certain kind of stimulus, in particular related to fake news or related to the content of fake news, leads to a certain stimulus in eye engagement, in fMRI, in stress response, you see a relationship that normally is pretty difficult to infer normally. So, very much different issues that can't be uncovered. For example, also, are there differences in terms of very sensitive issues? It's very difficult, for example, gender studies. In what way do people with different gender differentiate from each other? And just doing that based on questions, always hard. We're all interested in this question, like how do we differ? But just by asking and just by providing subjective viewpoints, that's always not so much tangible topic, but also very political one. So that could help to reveal differences, and sure, we're interested in that. Also, personal issues, like, for example, in particular, fears. Not necessarily goals, but fears. So what are we afraid of? Usually we do not tend to reveal that very often. So what are your fears? It's always easy to talk about what you can do, but it's in some ways it's very difficult to talk about what you can't do. And that's necessary. As I read and talked about the topic of technostress, it's more important about, related to technology, so what are individuals' fears? Also about hidden emotions. I might be able, in the end of the presentation research and nutshell session, also to show you about something like hidden emotions. And what we have done in the study where we were interested about, does an interface really could reveal being a stimulus for individuals' emotions. So does such kind of interfaces provide pleasure or really pain? So are there people bored or are people excited? So already there are some tools out there, they're called emotional recognition software. We also have that in Innsbruck as well, where you're able to measure basic emotions, 6 in total, and which is always also